Hello, and welcome back to Vampire the Masquerade Clans series, where I explain the clans inside Vampire the Masquerade to somebody that may be new to the tabletop setting or tabletops in general and has never heard of the franchise before, perhaps, because that is entirely possible. This time, we're talking about Ventrue. So clans are a bit like classes inside the game, and it is like a type of vampire that you're playing. It's transmitted by blood, so you're not just gonna change your class in the middle of playing, but that side has those kind of vampires, and that side has that kind of vampire, and from that region come that sort of vampire. That's kind of how clans work inside Vampire the Masquerade. Each one of them has like their own set of abilities, stuff that they do, and personality types that they kind of loosely are based around. Out of all possible clans or classes, I would say that Ventrue is one of the ones that is less loosely based around, and normally Ventrue embodies power and money hungry people. So, kings, CEOs, noble people, in their own history, they fully believe that they are the clan that's destined to rule all of vampires, as when vampires were created from the first vampire, he made the second generation of vampires, and he ordered one of the second generation vampires to embrace a guy named Ventrue, and he was supposed to advise the very first vampire on how to run and rule a city. And when the first vampire left, he left that first Ventrue in charge. Therefore, Ventrue should always be in charge. There's quite a lot of places in their history where they picked beef with other clans and other classes. Like, for example, a famous Ventrue named Artemis has established the Spartans, which then ended up heavily battling with a Bruja led city. And that's not the only time when Ventrue has organized a city to battle with a Bruja city in order to establish their own superiority. So there's a bit of beef in those clans. If anyone remembers that far back, and some vampires, they do carry grudges for a very, very long time. Then when Ventrue ruled, they weren't always very nice rulers. They tended to treat gangrel like animals, and they were so power and money hungry that they were prepared to get into a lot of really socially bad situations with other clans, up until they realized that that might cost them their leadership position. So now they kind of have a veneer of politeness going on, but in the end, they are the ruler clan, or at least wannabe ruler clan. That's kind of their defining thing. It's very hard to run away from that defining thing and defining topic, because kind of the want for power is very inherently in Ventrue, and they run some pretty strict power structures, especially within their own clan. So even if you wanted to play a rebel Ventrue, you might still exhibit quite a few very Ventrue-like features. Now that we briefly covered the history as to what is Ventrue, let's talk about what kind of abilities they get. So both in V20 Anniversary Edition and V5 Edition. V20's older, V5's newer. Some people prefer one over the other. They get the disciplines of Dominate, which is the ability to subjugate somebody mentally effectively. You issue them a mental command and they do as you say. And your ability to control somebody's mind can go up, up, up to a point where you can start removing memories, replacing memories, programming people to do like very specific things. It's mind control. It's mind control, the ability. Fortitude, so they have very thick skin. It's harder for them to take damage. And presence, which is the look at me ability, so they can really shine and really be heard in a room, and everybody will want to keep their eyes on them and will want to look at them as they're speaking. Normally, Ventrue used to be embraced from, as in made a vampire from the noble stock, the kings, the dukes, the queens, the kind of people that are, in power. Later on, when power kind of shifted to mean more money, they also started embracing people that are CEOs or other wealthy and influential people. Normally, Ventrue power structure is really far reaching. They're very well organized in their clan. Depending on the fame of the vampire and what kind of stuff they're owning. So normally it's like if you're very wealthy or you're holding territory, you will be famous inside your own clan, and therefore your standing based on that fame is going to be higher than somebody else's. The higher famed people in the clan kind of rule the lower famed people, and it kind of falls into categories. And even inside cities, just like confined little cities, there's gonna be a hierarchy of Ventrue that Ventrue fall into. And funnily enough, this normally will result in them having some sort of like board meeting-esque thing where like you will have specific representatives of the clan meeting to talk about Ventrue issues together on a schedule, because that's that kind of clan that they're into. They don't tend to embrace without the approval of other Ventrues, and they don't tend to really shun their clanmates, especially well established clanmates. So if another Ventrue needs the help of a Ventrue will go out of their way to help a Ventrue, even if it is very inconvenient. They keep a tight-knit community inside the clan. They make sure that the people that they turn into vampire are of a proper stock and already very well achieved inside the whole money, business, fame, wealth sort of area. Normally not like, I was an idol sort of fame, but like I was a duke, or I was so wealthy that I was famous, or I came from like this blue-blooded family and paparazzi liked reporting on us from time to time because we're of all the money. That sort of person, as long as they can prove that they're good with business, would also be a target for Ventrue, and this Ventrue would talk with other Ventrue before making another Ventrue, make sure that everybody kind of agrees and are on the same page. And then that new Ventrue would go through rigorous training where they would be explained the etiquette and the rules of being a Ventrue, until eventually they would be introduced to normally faction camarilla prince of the city, and they get to prove themselves as a Ventrue there. And then if they have integrated themselves well into the wider faction, they would be brought in front of the board of the Ventrues, which can quiz this person in any way, shape, or form that they want. And they have to survive this sort of drilling. And also, they have to recite the history of the Ventrue, the rules of the Ventrue, and the social norms of the Ventrue, and their own lineage, of course, because blood matters, and who's your dad, and who's your granddad, and who's your great granddad also matters and carries word and blah, blah, blah. So, if you wanted to play a Ventrue that doesn't quite fit into that whole structure, you would need to start with a person that would kind of land in the whole structure. So, a very promising finance student, for example, somebody that is climbing through the corporate ladder rather fast. And then you would get embraced as a Ventrue, made into a vampire that's a Ventrue. And from there on end, you would need to still pass and prove yourself as part of the clan. And that's where you could have a midlife crisis if you really wanted to, and declare that this is really not what you want to be doing, and throw that table upside down and get your character doing something else. But the need for wealth, status, and money will still kind of stick to them as features. That's why it's so hard to play a Ventrue that's not a Ventrue. Like, even if you're playing a rebel Ventrue, you're still kind of money, status, power obsessed. If you know what I'm saying. Now, let me just go back and talk a bit about factions. So, Camarilla is the, let's say, very lawful vampire faction that fits Ventrue really well. Normally, you have a power structure in there where you have the ones that are like secret council, then you have like princes of the area, and the prince of the area will have their own table of advisors, and they will have their own minions, and those minions will have their own minions. And when you're summoned by those higher up people, you're gonna have to report to those higher up people, and you'll have to do what the higher up people say that you should be doing. So they can be a bit like quest givers. You don't want to disrespect the prince, you don't want to step out of bounds, and you're gonna be upkeeping the whole masquerade thing, not letting anyone know that you're a vampire. And mortals shouldn't be finding out. You have a faction that's kind of opposed to that whole power thing, but not so much to upkeeping the masquerade thing. Those are the anarchs. They believe that every vampire should be a lot more free than that, but also they still need to somehow rule and like make sure that nobody's stepping out of line. So instead of princes, they tend to have barons. There's a bit more flexibility, a bit less of a power structure, but the power structure is there nonetheless. Therefore, sometimes when you see anarchs, you could just see them as young people that wanted power, but there was nowhere for them to stake power, and they didn't want to be at the bottom of the ladder, so they switched the ladder upside down so that now they made themselves a space that they can rule over. But it's, it's that kind of power friction thing going on there, but also the authority. And then you have the Sabbat, which is a faction of wild vampires that want all humans to definitely know that they're vampire, and they have no qualms with believing that they should be the rulers of people and that they should rule over people. And also, they really hate very old vampires because they pose a threat, because they used to really want to control them, and they have all sorts of old grudges running. So part of their whole spiel is going on crusades against really old vampires, but also they're a lot less controlled. So, for example, if you're in a Camarilla and you want to make a new vampire, you have to get permission from the prince. It has to be approved, and then everybody would need to know that this is a new vampire. If you're inside the Sabbat, you can actually kill and turn multiple people into a vampire in a singular night, and then use them as cannon fodder in whatever war you're currently fighting. That sort of thing wouldn't fly in Camarilla, and it wouldn't fly with the Anarchs, but it would fly in Sabbat. Ventrue are mostly Camarilla aligned. This doesn't mean fully. There will always be things that stand out a little. They were one of the few clans that actually made that whole faction happen. And obviously, it really appeals to them because they like holding such positions as prince. They rightfully believe that they should rule other vampires. Therefore, a system that's nice, lawful, organized, and they have a lot of chances to be at the top in. Like, I would say it's more rare for a prince of a city to be something other than Ventrue than it is for them to be a Ventrue. It fits them very well, hence why a lot of them are inside Camarilla. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't anti-tribu Ventrue, Ventrue going against the tribe. In version 1, apparently these were the wise guys and vagabonds, aka people that had the brains, but not the status nor the money, so they kind of stood out in their clan because they really shouldn't have been there. Like, most 99% of Ventrue will be embraced for their status or their money. So if you kind of don't have those things, you stand out, you fall out of line, you become the anti-tribu. In version 2 of the game, the anti-tribu, the ones opposing the regular Ventrue clan, are the old noble kings and lords that didn't like the idea of switching to also allowing rich people to enter their ranks. If you're against the whole tribe and like regular decisions that your clan's making, you can be a Sabbat Ventrue, you can be an Anarch Ventrue, but both of those will be in general a lot more rare than Camarilla Ventrue. I would say Anarch Ventrue would make a bit more sense, especially if your character is young, because you could be like, well, I'm not receiving the proper recognition and I can't get domain of my own, I can't stake my own kingdom. So in this group that's all against this power structure, I can kind of weasel my way into the top and actually have like my own barony, which is gonna be a bit smaller than a princedom, but it's still gonna be my own, which counts for something, you know. With Sabbat, that's a bit harder, mainly because Sabbath have other clans that are very also rulership oriented and that kind of compete with Ventrue. For example, La Sombra. So yeah, you would have a harder time in there, but at the same time, you would be a bit less restricted. You could be more savage. You could get your hands a lot dirtier, and it would possibly kind of make sense if you're like an old fart that believes that they should own the world because they were a king, and now there's all of these people that just had money, but they weren't even a blue blood. Oh, getting into the clan, and you just really want to fight that. You want to fight Camarilla, so you join the Sabbat with that particular reason. But at the same time, it would be a lot harder for you because there are other very power hungry clans already there. So it's hard to navigate that situation. Now, Every clan has a weakness. It is something that they're subjected to from like the day they become a vampire. For Ventrue, their weakness is that they can only eat a certain kind of person. What that is will differ Ventrue to Ventrue. So, for example, you can only eat brown eyed people, you can only eat hippies, you can only drink blood of somebody that has cancer, you can only drink blood from twins, you can only drink blood from Slovakians. That distinction can be very specific or fairly wide, like you can only drink blood from a free spirit, that sort of thing. But it will be there, and the only time that can ever change is when your preferred blood goes extinct. So let's say you can only drink from Slovakians. Slovakia is no longer a place, and that is no longer a group of people. You now probably can only drink from people that now occupy the territory that used to be Slovakia. You know, like your taste changed, but not that much. And it's still very restrictive and still very specific. If you drink any other blood that's not that, your body just kind of rejects it. There's some concessions made that if you're a very new vampire and you don't know what it is, your preference, you will still be able to get sustenance from other type of blood until one day you're just gonna drink from somebody and you're gonna be like, ah, that's the blood. And then you can only drink from then onwards. This has been weaponized before, so a lot of Ventrue will keep what is their preferred victim type very close to their hearts and won't tell anybody. Because, for example, if it's widely known that you can only drink from people with blue eyes, or from people with blonde hair, or from people that are only under 5 foot in height, or something like that, it is kind of easy for your opposition to attack you by simply making sure that there is no person that fits that definition anywhere close in your vicinity. And yeah, that would be kind of a pain in the ballsack to like remove a whole type of person from a city, but for a group of vampires, that's very doable. And then effectively, you are starving your Ventrue. Like, keep that up for a couple of months, and that Ventrue is probably like in a coma from starvation. It's not a good thing. Like, it's very easy to bully a Ventrue based on that. Therefore, Ventrues tend to not really expose their weakness to other vampires all that easily. Like, everybody knows that Ventrue can only drink very specific blood, but they're not gonna like share openly what that is for that specific Ventrue, you know. So version 5 added this thing that is a compulsion, which is something that your character must do if you botch a roll, any kind of roll. A roll is only botched if you roll like a natural 1 and you have nothing to counter that. So, for example, if you need to get above 6 to succeed and you're rolling 4d10 dice, and one rolls a natural 10 and one rolls a natural 1, they kind of cancel each other out, and then you don't botch. Or like if you roll a 2, a 3, a 4, or 5 and you don't succeed because you needed to roll a 6, you still don't botch. You only botch when you roll a natural 1 and there aren't any like successes to balance it out and to remove that. At that point, you get a botch, and upon a botch, you suffer from a compulsion. For a Ventrue, the compulsion is somebody in this scene must obey a command from you. Because you're the one that must be in charge. The command can be anything, but other people must obey you. And like, you will be obsessed with just trying to force other people to obey you until you can get somebody to obey you. And in that case, the compulsion will kind of fall away and you can play your character normally again. This is honestly the rundown of Ventrue. It's a fairly straightforward clan. Unlike something like Semitsi, which I tried my best to cover last week. That was hard. Ventrue are a lot easier and a lot more straightforward, and I do very appreciate that. It's very easy to say what is a Ventrue and what isn't a Ventrue. And there's that. I believe that with this amount of information, you can go out there and play a Ventrue. Unless you get a very asshole storyteller that actually tries to grill you on Ventrue traditions and Ventrue history. But normally that's not how people play. So you kind of have an idea of what the clan is like. You could go out and play that now. So then, thank you for watching. I'm doing this series like on a week-by-week basis, and we're gonna continue going until I run out of clans. This was the nice and easy clan. I kind of started on mostly nice and easy clans. It's gonna get a lot more insane as I try to explain the more complex clans. I'm not looking forward to the necromancy one because it's less of a singular clan and more of an amalgamation of a whole bunch of different necromancy users that all have their own quirks. The list goes very long, a lot longer than something like this, which is practically not a list at all. It's just a very stern, firm class, which is very easy to cover. If you like my channel, please take a look around about what other things that I do, because I make a lot of videos on video games. I play them. I stream them sometimes, but I make like opinion pieces on them, and I also make videos on the occult. And for now, I'm doing these series on the tabletop of Vampire the Masquerade, and I might cover other things to do with Vampire the Masquerade after I run out of clans to cover. I also plan to cover a couple of bloodlines, which is not quite a clan. They're too small to be called a clan, but a couple of those are not really related to any existing clans. That's why I would want to include them as like their own thing and their own video, especially considering that at least one of them is like a fully playable clan thing in V5, but not in V20. Like, what's a clan? What's a bloodline? It can go up and down, up and down. So, you know, it's sometimes a bloodline's a bloodline, other times a bloodline can become a clan, other times bloodline was a clan and then got demoted to being a bloodline after too many of people inside said, clan, rest in spaghetti, never forgetty. So, you know, if you're down to like 100 vampires, nobody's gonna take you seriously anymore. And they're gonna be like, you're not a clan. You're not part of the vampire society. You're just a bloodline. Go away. Go back to the kiddie table. Play over there. So anyway, if you like that kind of content, and other kind of content that I do on this channel, please subscribe. That would really make me happy, because I do have a bit of Ventrue in me. I am kind of power hungry, and number go up, feel good. That's an idea. A Ventrue, that's an influencer. That's not quite their place, but if an influencer was rich enough, I'm pretty sure that they could be turned into a Ventrue, and then they can fight over numbers on social media while all of the older Ventrue look at them like they're crazy. So yeah, that's an idea. And also, I would really like to thank my Patreons, which, fund me and help me make videos such as these. If you would like to be on this tier, this is a $3 tier. I don't tend to offer anything else outside of this to people on Patreon. You can also pledge for $1 for unofficial gratitude, effectively. I will send you a thank you message, but I won't put you on this list. It's because I don't really want to lock away content or treat people differently. So this is just the people that are really kind and give me money because they want to give me money and for absolutely no other reason. So I really thank you for them. I thank them for you. I thank them. That's the right word. So then, thank you all for watching. Patreons and non-Patreons, subscribers and not subscribers, please subscribe. And I hopefully gonna see you on my other videos. Toodaloo.